Have you ever felt that shift in a relationship? Something you just can't quite put your finger on, but you feel it in your bones? Well, today we're diving into a really compelling perspective that suggests our bodies often tell the truth long before our mouths ever do. And we're not just talking about having a bad week. We're looking for those deep underlying patterns that physical intimacy can sometimes bring to the surface. And really, this is the core question we're unpacking today. The idea is simple, but it is powerful. We can say I love you, we can pretend everything's fine, but our bodies, especially in those moments of intimacy, often just refuse to lie. They can end up revealing the very truths we're trying so hard to hide.
So here's our roadmap. First, we're going to explore the central theory, why the bedroom can be such an honest mirror of a relationship. Then, we'll walk through 4 different sets of signs, starting with the really subtle shifts and moving to the more obvious warnings. And it all leads to the final crucial takeaway.
Okay, let's start with that foundational concept. Why is physical intimacy seen as such a powerful truth teller for the health of a relationship?
The source material we're looking at calls this the intimacy mirror. And the theory goes like this. You can fake a smile over dinner, right? You can say all the right words. But in those moments of true physical connection, it's almost impossible to fake your real emotional state. It's this space where the heart and mind are kind of laid bare.
So, what are the first clues? Well, this perspective suggests that they're often the most subtle ones, these small but really significant shifts in the emotional temperature of your intimate life.
The very first sign is a sudden drop in passion. And listen, we're not talking about just being tired after a long day at work. This is when your partner is physically there in the room with you, but you feel completely and utterly alone. It's like the emotional connection has just vanished into thin air. This quote from the source material, wow, it just captures that feeling perfectly, doesn't it? It's that profound sense of loneliness, even when you're physically holding someone. The warmth, the presence that used to define your connection, it's just gone. Think about it like this. A passionate connection is spontaneous, it's engaged, there's a mutual warmth. A disconnected one, though, it feels mechanical, distant, almost spiritually absent. And here's a key insight from the source. Desire rarely just disappears. More often than not, it simply changes direction. And building right on that same theme is the disappearance of those deep, soulful connection points. Kisses become superficial, a quick peck on the cheek or on the lips, but with zero real heat behind it. And maybe most importantly, eye contact is consistently avoided. It transforms an act of connection into just a routine to be finished. All right, this next category of signs is a little different. It's not about subtraction, it's about addition. It's about the sudden appearance of new behaviors that seem to come completely out of nowhere. Now, this next sign can be really confusing at first. Your partner suddenly brings new techniques or ideas into the bedroom that you've literally never discussed. And yeah, on the surface, that might sound exciting, but this perspective suggests we need to ask a critical question. Where did they learn this? And that's the really provocative question at the heart of this sign, isn't it? The suggestion here isn't that they've been reading articles or watching videos, but that this new expertise might have been practiced somewhere else. It's a challenging thought, for sure, but it is central to this particular perspective. This one is way more subtle. You might start hearing little comments like, some men prefer, or I read an article that said. And look, while they might seem like totally innocent observations, this perspective frames them as potential echoes of another person's preferences or opinions being slowly introduced into your relationship. Which leads us to our next theme, active physical withdrawal. This is when a partner starts to consciously build a wall, creating distance both during and after any intimate moments. The crucial thing to look for here is the pattern, the escalation. It might start with that emotional coldness, right? The moment you're done, they just roll over and grab their phone. Then that can progress into physical guardedness, where they almost seem protective of their own body. And the final stage is just blatant mental distraction, where you can just tell their mind is a million miles away. This brings us to the final and most overt set of behaviors. According to the source, these signs represent a really big shift from that passive disconnection to active indifference and even outright rejection. So at this stage, intimacy can become this cold, robotic routine. Think same time, same sequence with absolutely zero spontaneity. And this is often paired with a complete lack of concern for your pleasure. It's not a shared experience anymore. They're just going through the motions. Here's another really powerful quote from the source that just nails the emotional weight of this stage. It highlights that awful feeling of being the only one invested, turning what should be this beautiful shared experience into something lonely and transactional. And the final sign we're looking at is when rejection becomes the rule, not the exception. Of course, occasional excuses are normal in any relationship. But when I'm tired or I have a headache becomes a predictable nightly pattern, well, this perspective argues it's no longer just an excuse, it's a statement. Ultimately, it's not about a single no. It's about the trend line. When you see the frequency of rejection shift from being this occasional thing to the constant default setting in the relationship, that's signaling a fundamental change in the dynamic.
Okay, so we've looked at all these individual clues. Now let's zoom out and see the full picture that these signs are meant to paint. And here they are, all 10 signs we've walked through, from vanishing passion and new practices, all the way to coldness and constant rejection. Now, the crucial point here is not to fixate on any single one of them. Hey, one sign on its own might just mean a bad week. But when you start to see several of them forming a consistent pattern over time, that's when a much, much clearer story is being told. It's about the full painting, not a single brushstroke. And ultimately, the message from this source isn't one of despair, but of empowerment. The argument is that recognizing and facing a painful reality is always better than living in a comfortable lie. Awareness gives you the power to make conscious decisions and to protect your own dignity.
And so we're left with this final crucial question. Now, this was just one perspective, but it really touches on a universal challenge. In any relationship, how do we learn to tell the difference between a temporary storm and a permanent change in the climate? It's definitely something we're thinking about.